One of my favorite new features in Vue 6 is the ability to paint ecosystems, and we can do this directly on to any object within our scene, even onto infinite planes. So it's a very cool new tool. I'm going to note that I'm using just a standard sky right now from the original Vue 5 skies, just so that it renders a little bit quicker and we see a much quicker preview, as opposed to spectral atmospheres or volumetric, which can take a little bit longer to render. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and load in a standard terrain for right now. And I'm just going to zoom out in our camera view and kind of reposition ourselves so we can get a little bit better look at it. But we're going to be painting entirely on the top view. So I'm going to go up to the top and select Paint Ecosystem, which is going to pull up our Ecosystem Painter. Right now you'll notice there's an X in the scene, and that's because we don't have any ecosystem population. There are no plants or objects, anything added to be painting, which is why there's an X. Let's just go ahead and add a plant right now. And I'm just going to select this tropic plant should be fine. Click OK. Now we can add any number of these. We can add multiple ones so we can be painting at the same time. Also go ahead and just add a cactus in there so we can see a difference between the two. If we go back up to the top and look at the tool, you'll see that we have a single instance. A single instance means that we're painting one object at a time, or in this case, two. So every time we click, we'll be creating one of each, the tropic plant and the cactus. What we also have is the brush. The brush is very cool because we can adjust the brush radius, how large of an area we're going to be painting at once, the brush flow, how quickly everything is going to be populated, and of course the scale and the color. What we also have is the ability to drive these with pressure. So we can drive the radius, the flow, and the scale all with a pen tablet. So if you're using a Wacom tablet, this is for you. And if you're, or any other type of pen tablet, you're going to want to be paying attention to this because this is a very cool new tool. If we take a look at our brush radius, and I'm going to go ahead and drive with pressure and switch over to the tablet, you'll notice that when I come over to paint, and the harder I push down, you'll see that the radius changes. So right now I'm just clicking a very tiny amount, and we can see the brush sort of getting a little bit larger, but the harder I click down, the larger the brush gets. And we adjust that total largeness of the brush by adjusting the brush radius. So if we do a very small amount, and then we can do a very large amount, and we can control that all with the pressure of our pen. What we can also do is adjust the flow that way. So I'm going to bring our brush radius down, turn off drive pressure on the radius, and turn it on to flow. And now with brush flow on, what I can do is lightly click and just get a little bit of pressure. But the harder I push down, the more flow we're going to get and the more plants that are going to be created. So that's very cool. We can also adjust the scale with this. So if I click down lightly, we'll have smaller plants. And then the harder I click down, we'll actually get some larger plants. This also works with airbrush style we have on right now. And with airbrush style, the longer we leave our brush in the same place, the more objects it's going to be creating, as long as we're still clicking or pressing down with our pen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on these pressures off and actually go back to just working with the mouse again. But what we can do is go in and adjust the color now. So let's say we want to have some different variations, different colors. I'm going to go ahead and change that to blue. Click OK, and we can start to paint these objects so that they're blue. So that's very cool. And we can make some really interesting looking stuff, or even just do nice variations of things, changing the leaves of trees so that maybe we have a nice autumn scene. We can do different colors that way, and it can all just be painted directly onto these objects, onto the ground plane. If I go ahead and add any more objects to this, it'll just paint right over it. What we can also do is restrict this to selected objects. If you only want to paint on one object, we can say restrict to selected object, and now it will only paint on our terrain. We will not see any other objects being painted on because our terrain is the one that's selected. So we also have that option. What we also have is our display options, which is really neat, and the ability to change the quality of our ecosystem in the viewport. Right now our default quality is set at billboard. Well, I'm going to change this to smooth shaded and select full quality near camera. And what I could also do is change this back to billboard, and with full quality near camera, we'll end up pretty much getting the same effect. I'm just going to close these out or move them off to the side so we can see a little bit better what's going on. Right now I have billboards in the back, and then closest closer to the camera, we have full quality objects. So now we have the ability to actually adjust the view of our ecosystem to be able to take a look and see what it's going to look like full quality when it's rendered. So the closer to the camera we are, the higher quality we have. And then we can also go back and change the overall quality if we need to by going up to display options and changing that default quality to just smooth shaded. So now all of our objects are going to be of highest quality. I'm going to change that back to billboard, and we're going to keep the full quality near camera, and that way we don't have our scene overloading, which is one of the reasons why that's there, so that way just what we're looking at in the scene is what's going to be highest quality, and we don't need to worry about the rest of it hogging up system resources. As you can see already, we even have 3 million, almost 4 million polygons in our scene, and there's barely anything to it. Of course, View can handle this a very large amount, and we can go down to the lower right hand corner and look at how much free resources we have, and in this case I have 88. So we really don't have to worry about it at this point, but it's still something to keep in mind when you're working on your scenes so that you're not running out of system resources. I'm going to change this back to our polygon count, and we're going to go back into our painter. If we take a look at our eraser, we can just go in, and it works just like you expect it would, where we can just go in and erase our instances, which is very neat. And then we also have our color and scaling brush. Our color and scaling brush allows us to color afterwards. So if we're in our brush and we don't want to create the color initially, we can go in and do color and scaling later. I'm going to turn off scaling, but we have color, say red. So now I can paint over this. To have red instances, and we can also drive that with pressure along with the scaling and along with the brush radius. So we still have the ability to use our pen pressure. Like I said, we can do this to add just about anything.
And if we take a look at the bottom, we can see that we have paint what. And basically what this is asking us to do is what do we want to paint from our ecosystem population. Currently we have tropic and the cactus in there. So right now a bit of everything is going to paint a little bit of our tropic and a little bit of our cactus. So as we paint in there, like we were before, we're getting a little bit of the cactuses and a little bit of the tropic. If I select only selected item, then now with our tropic selected, it is only going to paint our tropic plant. If I select cactus, it's only going to paint our cactus. And this can be extremely helpful when you have lots of different plants loaded into your ecosystem population, and you just want to paint specifically one or the other, or you want to paint a little bit of everything.
So we can go through the brushes, the erasers, and all that, and change those different objects. Paint only selected items if we want to. Change our color to whatever it is that we want. We can do a little bit of yellow in there. Paint some objects that way. We can up our scale and make some very large objects in there. And I'm just going to go ahead and close this out. And now we can take a look at our scene. We have a very interesting looking terrain here. We have some very large plants and some very small ones. But it's a very, very versatile tool. We can do a lot with it, and we can be very, very specific about our ecosystems with it, which is great. What we can also do is actually edit these ecosystems and each one of the instances as objects. We can convert our ecosystems to objects if we want. It works for both painting and regular ecosystems. Let's go ahead and take a look at that really quick. And I'm going to select File, New, Clear Spring, just to show you how we can select instances. And what I'm going to do is just paint something a little bit smaller than we had before, something a little bit simpler, easier to edit. So I'm going to go back into our Paint Ecosystem, and I'm going to select the fir tree with the brush, and just go ahead and paint a few of those in. Doesn't have to be very many. Then I can go ahead and close that out, and I'm going to zoom out our camera so we can see those a little bit better. And go up to the button that's right next to our Paint Ecosystem brush, which is our Ecosystem Selector. And what this allows us to do is actually select our instances and our ecosystem. And now I'm going to go ahead, and once these are selected, we can see the little red dots indicating that those instances are selected. I'm going to right mouse click and convert to objects. And what this is going to do is convert this back into fir tree objects for the scene so that we can edit them as we normally would edit any sort of object. And I'm going to just go ahead and scale these up a bit. So we have some larger trees than the ones that are already in there. And now what we can do is move them around if we want to. We can select each of the individual objects, size those up, and we can move them if we wanted to as well. And then I'm going to go back and select all of these trees again, right mouse click, and revert to instances. And now it's back into the ecosystem, and we cannot edit them, but we can see the changes that we had made. We made them a little bit larger. And we have that one that's a little bit bigger than the others. We moved them around a bit. So there's a lot we can do with it. We can go ahead and just select the other ones if we wanted to. We could also use this to deselect. And we can adjust our brush radius, whether or not we drive it with pressure. And it tells us how many instances we have selected. Right now it says we have 15 selected. And we can go ahead and also even save these selections. So now this selection is saved. And we could load a selection as well. I'm going to do another one where we have 53 instances, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And it's going to ask us if we want to override the existing selection. I can click yes. And that way we can just save the instances that we have selected. So I can just load that, and now it deleted those ones. So I can show you just a little bit better by selecting all of them. Now we have 99 instances selected, and I'm going to click load, and now it just loads up those 53 we already had. So that way you can go back and sort of undo your selection. So it's kind of an undo. We can also use the manipulate in here, where we can actually convert to objects just within this panel. I usually prefer to just right mouse click within the viewport, but we can also do it in here, converting to objects. We can move instances to the global ecosystem, or we can change instance types to fir tree, things like that. And right now, even without converting them to objects, we can also adjust our instances. So there's a lot we can do with this selection. We can size them up. We can go ahead and deselect some of these, and we can go ahead and manipulate them again and scale them up. So we don't even necessarily have to convert them to objects, but it is one option that is there in case there's a few of them we really want to manipulate a little bit more, or if you just want some more control over that specific object, even going into the plant editor and changing it. There's some more options available there for you. But other than that, we can just go in and select the ecosystem, or select our painted ecosystem, and change instances, and there's just so much more we can do with it now.